They told me my husband's car accident was a tragedy, a random act of fate. But the envelope I found in his closet the day after his funeral, that envelope told me a different story. It told me that the man I loved for 22 years was murdered. And the killer, he was standing right next to me at the funeral, holding my hand. My name is Clara. And I am about to tell you something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. It is not an easy story. It is not a pretty story. But it is my story. And I have learned that the only way to survive a thing is to speak it out loud. The day it all started was a Tuesday, but not just any Tuesday. It was the day after we buried my husband, David. The sky was gray and heavy, like a wet blanket over the whole world. The rain had finally stopped falling, but the ground was still soft and muddy. I remember looking out the window of our bedroom and seeing the fresh dirt on his grave from across the street. The cemetery was just there, always there. Watching me, David died on a Thursday. A truck driver ran a red light on the highway. The police said it was instant. That word, instant, they use it to make you feel better, I think. Like, don't worry, he didn't suffer, but I suffered. I have been suffering every second since that phone call rang at 3:47 in the afternoon. Our son, Leo, was at school when I got the news. He was 16 years old, a tall, quiet boy with his father's eyes. Warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. I had to pick him up early. I had to tell him that his father was never coming home again. I will never forget the sound he made. It was not a cry. It was not a scream. It was something worse. It was a sound like an animal that has been caught in a trap. The funeral was Monday, a small church, a lot of flowers. People said things like, he was a good man and he didn't deserve this. And they were right. David was a good man. He was kind and patient and funny. He made pancakes on Saturday mornings. He coached Leo's little league team. He held my hand when we watched movies on the couch. He was my best friend for 22 years. So when I found myself standing in front of his closet the day after the funeral, I told myself I was just looking for comfort. I wanted to smell his shirts. I wanted to press my face into his sweaters and pretend he had just taken them off. Grief makes you do strange things. It makes you reach for ghosts. His closet was neat. Very neat. David was the kind of man who organized his shoes by color. Black ones first, then brown, then casual. His suits hung in a row, each one in a clear plastic bag from the dry cleaner. His ties were rolled and stored in a wooden drawer. Everything had its place. I ran my fingers along the sleeves of his favorite blue sweater. It was soft. It still smelled like him, like sandalwood and coffee. I started to cry, but I was tired of crying. My eyes felt dry and hot, like they had no tears left to give. That is when I saw it. On the top shelf, pushed all the way to the back, between two old winter coats, there was a large yellow envelope. It was thick. The kind of envelope you use for important papers. Legal papers, maybe, or bank documents. It had no writing on the front, no address, no stamp. But when I pulled it down and turned it over, I saw my name. Clara. Written in David's handwriting. His neat, careful letters. The same way he wrote my birthday cards, the same way he wrote grocery lists. But this was different. This writing looked heavier, darker. Like he had pressed the pen harder than he needed to. My heart started to beat faster. I sat down on the floor of the closet, right there among his shoes, and I held the envelope in my lap. It was heavy, not just paper heavy. Truth heavy. Why would David leave an envelope for me inside his closet? Why not give it to me? Why hide it behind coats? He was not sick. He was not dying. The accident came out of nowhere. So this envelope was not a goodbye he planned. It was something else. Something he kept secret. Something he never got the chance to share. I ripped it open with shaking hands. Inside, there was a stack of papers, bank statements, printed emails, handwritten notes, and on top of everything, a letter. A long letter written on yellow legal paper. David's handwriting again. I started to read. My dearest Clara, if you are reading this, I am gone, and I am so sorry. Not because I left you, but because I failed you, I failed our family, and I was too proud and too scared to tell you while I was alive. My throat closed up. I wiped my eyes and kept reading. You know Mark, my best friend, my business partner, the man who stood next to me at our wedding, the man who held Leo when he was baptized. I trusted him with everything, my money, my dreams, my secrets. And Clara, he betrayed me. He has been betraying me for years. I stopped reading. Mark Thompson, David's best friend since college, the man who came to our house every Christmas, the man who called me sister and hugged my son like an uncle. My hands started to shake, not from sadness, from something else, something cold. I read on. 3 years ago, I started noticing problems in our business accounts. Money was missing, small amounts at first. A few $100s here and there. I thought it was a mistake, an accounting error. I told Mark about it and he said he would look into it. He said not to worry, he was my partner. I trusted him, so I did not worry. But the amounts got bigger. Thousands of dollars, then tens of thousands. I hired a private accountant to look at the books without telling Mark. What that accountant found made me sick. Mark had been creating fake vendors, writing checks to shell companies, and funneling money into a secret bank account. He was stealing from our company, from our future, from Leo's college fund, from our retirement. I confronted him 6 months ago. I will never forget the look on his face. It was not shame, it was not guilt, it was anger. He looked at me, his oldest friend, and he said, "You owe me, David. I built this company with you. I worked twice as hard as you. I deserve more." I told him he had 1 week to return the money and resign from the company, or I would go to the police. He laughed. He actually laughed, Clara. Then he said, "You go to the police and I will destroy you. I know things about you, things that will put you in prison." I did not know what he was talking about. I had done nothing wrong. But Mark is a snake, a smart snake. He had been planning for this moment. Over the next few weeks, I discovered that he had been forging my signature on documents. He had been taking loans in my name. He had been making it look like I was the one stealing. He framed me, Clara. He framed me for his own crimes. I have been gathering evidence for months. Bank records, emails, recordings of phone calls. It is all in this envelope. Everything you need to prove that I am innocent and that Mark is a thief and a liar. I was going to go to the police the week after I died. I had an appointment with a federal investigator on that Friday. But the truck hit me on Thursday. I do not believe in coincidences, Clara. I think Mark knew what I was planning. I think he wanted to stop me. I cannot prove that he caused the accident, but I need you to be careful. Mark is dangerous. Do not trust him. Do not let him near you or Leo. And whatever you do, do not let him know you have this envelope. I am sorry. I am so sorry for leaving you with this burden. You deserved a peaceful life. You deserved a husband who protected you. Instead, you got me. A man who trusted the wrong person and paid the price. Take this evidence to the police. Take it to a lawyer. Clear my name. And then, Clara, please take care of our boy. Tell Leo that his father loved him more than anything in this world. That was never a lie. That was always true. With all my broken heart, David, the letter fell from my hands. I sat there on the floor of the closet, surrounded by his shoes and his smell and his secrets, and I felt the world tilt beneath me. Mark. Sweet, smiling Mark. The man who brought us casseroles after Leo was born. The man who cried at our wedding. The man who hugged me at the funeral just yesterday and said, "I will take care of you, Clara." David would want that. He was a liar. He was a thief. And maybe, God help me, maybe he was a murderer. I do not know how long I sat there. The sun moved across the floor. The light changed from gold to gray. I heard Leo come home from school. His key turned in the lock. His footsteps in the hallway. "Mom, you home?" I stuffed the envelope inside my shirt. I stood up, wiped my face, and walked out of the closet. Leo was standing in the bedroom doorway, looking at me with his father's eyes. "You okay?" he asked. "You look sick." I wanted to tell him. I wanted to fall into his arms and pour out every terrible thing I had just learned. But I could not. Not yet. Not until I understood what was happening. Not until I knew who to trust. "I'm fine, baby," I said. "Just tired. Go start your homework. I'll make dinner." He looked at me for a long moment. He knew I was lying, but he nodded and walked away. That is the thing about grief. It gives you permission to lie. Everyone expects you to be broken, so no one questions it when you act strange. That night, after Leo went to bed, I took the envelope to the kitchen table. I spread everything out. Bank statements showing money moved to accounts I did not know existed. Emails between Mark and a man named Victor, who I later learned was Mark's cousin and the owner of a fake supply company. Handwritten notes where Mark had calculated how much he could steal without being noticed. And recordings, little digital voice recorders. David had recorded phone calls. I played one on my phone. Mark's voice came through the speaker. I knew it immediately. That smooth, friendly voice. The voice that had told 1,000 jokes at 1,000 dinners. David, listen to me. You don't want to do this. You go to the police and you will ruin yourself. I have documents. I have proof that you signed everything. Your signature is on every loan. David's voice, tired and angry. Those are forgeries, Mark. You know it. I know it. A judge will know it, Mark laughed. By the time a judge figures it out, your life will be destroyed, your marriage will be destroyed. Clara will leave you. Leo will hate you. Is that what you want? You are a monster, David said. No, Mark said. I am a businessman. You should have paid better attention. You were always too busy being the nice guy, the good husband, the perfect father. While you were playing house, I was building an empire. You just got in the way. I turned off the recording. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I sat in the dark kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my husband's nightmare, and I felt something new. Not grief. Not sadness. Rage. Mark had taken everything from me. He had taken my husband. He had taken my son's father. He had taken my future. And now he was walking around free, pretending to be my friend, pretending to care. I decided right then, I was not going to let him win. The next morning, I called a lawyer. A woman named Helen Cross. She was recommended by a friend who had gone through a divorce. I did not tell her everything on the phone. I just said I needed to discuss a urgent matter involving fraud and evidence of a crime. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. But first, I had to go to the bank. David and I had a safety deposit box. I had never used it. David kept the key in his desk drawer. I found it easily. I put all the evidence from the envelope into a large manila folder and drove to the bank. I put the folder in the safety deposit box and locked it. Then I put the key back in my pocket. I was not going to carry that evidence around with me, not until I knew what to do, and not until I figured out how to protect Leo. That afternoon, I drove to Helen Cross's office. It was a small building downtown, with a sign on the door that said Cross and Associates, Attorneys at Law. Helen was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She looked like the kind of woman who had seen everything and was not easily surprised. I sat in her office and told her everything. I told her about David's letter, about the stolen money, about the forgeries, about the recordings, about Mark's threat, and about my fear that the truck accident was not an accident. Helen listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me for a long time. Clara, she said slowly, this is very serious. If even half of what you have told me is true, Mark Thompson has committed multiple federal crimes. Fraud, embezzlement, forgery. And if there is any evidence that he was involved in your husband's death, that would be conspiracy to commit murder. I felt sick. What do I do? Helen tapped her pen on the desk. First, you do not tell anyone about this. Not your son, not your friends, not Mark, especially not Mark. If he knows you have this evidence, he will try to destroy it. And he might try to hurt you or Leo. I already put everything in a safety deposit box, I said. Helen nodded. Good, that was smart. Next, I am going to make some calls. I have a contact at the FBI. White Collar Crime Division. This is exactly the kind of case they handle. But Clara, I need you to prepare yourself. Going after a man like Mark is dangerous. He has money, he has resources, and he has proven that he will do anything to protect himself. I do not care, I said. He took my husband from me. He took my son's father. I will not let him get away with it. Helen smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Good, then let's get to work. The next few weeks were a blur. I went through the motions of life. I got Leo up for school. I made dinner. I paid bills. I answered sympathy cards. But inside, I was a different person. I was a detective. I was a soldier. I was a woman on a mission. Helen introduced me to a FBI agent named Agent Miller. He was a quiet man with a tired face and kind eyes. He listened to my story the same way Helen had. He asked questions. He took notes. He asked to see the evidence. I took him to the bank, and we opened the safety deposit box together. Agent Miller looked through everything. The bank statements, the emails, the recordings. When he finished, he looked at me and said, Mrs. Harrison, this is a gold mine. Your husband did excellent work. This evidence is enough to indict Mark Thompson on at least a dozen charges. My heart lifted. For the first time since David died, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. So you will arrest him? Agent Miller held up his hand. Not yet. We need to build a case. We need to connect Mark directly to the fraud. We need to talk to witnesses, and we need to be careful. If Mark finds out we are investigating him, he could flee. He could destroy evidence. He could hurt someone. He looked at me seriously. Mrs. Harrison, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you think Mark had something to do with your husband's accident? I thought about it. I had thought about it every night since I found the envelope. I do not know, I said. But David did not believe in coincidences. Neither do I, Agent Miller nodded. We are looking into the accident. The truck driver's name is Raymond Cross. No relation to your lawyer. He has a record. Small stuff, petty theft, assault. He also has a brother who works for one of Mark's shell companies. We are looking into that connection, but I need you to be patient. These things take time. Patience. I did not have patience. I had grief and rage and a 16-year-old boy who woke up screaming from nightmares about his father. But I nodded and said I would wait. The hardest part was pretending. Pretending that everything was normal. Pretending that I was just a grieving widow. Pretending that Mark was still my friend. Mark called me often in those weeks. He checked on me. He asked if I needed anything. He offered to help with money. He offered to help with Leo. Every time I saw his name on my phone, my stomach turned to ice. But I answered. I smiled. I said, "Thank you, Mark. You are so kind." It was the hardest acting I have ever done. One day, Mark came to the house. He showed up unannounced, carrying a bag of groceries and a bottle of wine. I was in the neighborhood, he said. Thought I would check on my favorite girls. I invited him in. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Leo was at school. We were alone. Mark sat on the couch. He looked around the living room. His eyes lingered on the photos of David. I miss him, you know, he said. Every day, he was like a brother to me. I sat across from him. I kept my hands in my lap so he would not see them shake. I know, Mark. He loved you like a brother. Mark nodded. He looked sad. He looked genuine. He was a good actor. Better than me, probably. Clara, I want to help you. With money, I mean. David and I had some business things we never finished. There are some accounts I need to close. Some paperwork I need you to sign. My heart stopped. What kind of paperwork? Mark pulled a folder from his bag. Just some forms, nothing complicated. David was taking money from the company. I do not want to say anything bad about him. He was my friend, but he made some mistakes, some bad investments. He took money that was not his. I have been trying to cover for him, but now that he is gone, the banks are asking questions. He opened the folder. There were papers inside, legal-looking documents. I saw David's name on them. I saw Mark's name. I saw numbers. Large numbers. I need you to sign these, Mark said. They say that you acknowledge David took the money, that you agree to repay it from his life insurance, that you will not pursue any legal action against me or the company. He slid a pen across the coffee table toward me. I looked at the pen, I looked at the papers, I looked at Mark's face. His friendly, smiling, trustworthy face, and I understood, this was it. This was the trap. Mark was trying to get me to sign a confession to a crime David did not commit. If I signed, Mark would have proof that David was a thief. He could destroy David's memory. He could take our money. He could walk away clean. I picked up the pen. Mark's smile widened. Then I put the pen down. Mark, I said softly, I cannot sign anything without my lawyer looking at it first. You understand. Grief brain, I do not want to make a mistake. Mark's smile flickered, just for a second. Then it came back, brighter than before. Of course, Clara, of course. Take your time, no rush, just let me know when you are ready. He put the papers back in the folder. He stood up. He kissed my cheek. His lips were cold. Take care of yourself, Clara, and remember, I am here for you, always. After he left, I ran to the bathroom and threw up. That night, I called Helen. I told her about the papers. I told her about Mark's visit. I told her I was scared. Helen's voice was calm but serious. Clara, listen to me. Mark is getting nervous. He knows you have something. He does not know what, but he suspects. You need to be very careful. Do not be alone with him again. Do not let him in your house, and keep Leo close, very close. I hung up the phone and went to Leo's room. He was doing homework at his desk. He looked up when I came in. "Mom, what's wrong?" I sat on his bed. "Nothing, baby, I just wanted to see you." He looked at me with those brown eyes, David's eyes. "You are lying," he said. "You have been lying for weeks. I am not a kid, Mom, I am 16. I know something is going on, just tell me." I wanted to. God, I wanted to, but I was afraid. Afraid of what Mark would do, afraid of putting Leo in danger, afraid of losing my son the way I lost my husband. So I did the only thing I could. I told him a half-truth. "Your father's business had some problems," I said. "Mark is involved. I am trying to fix it. That is all. I promise I will tell you everything when I can." Leo stared at me for a long time. Then he nodded. "Okay, Mom, but you better keep that promise." "I will," I said. "I swear." 2 weeks later, Agent Miller called me with news. They had arrested Raymond Cross, the truck driver, not for the accident, for something else. A drug charge, and Raymond Cross was talking. He was offering to trade information for a lighter sentence. "What kind of information?" I asked. Agent Miller's voice was tight. "He says he was paid to hit your husband's car. He says a man named Victor gave him $5,000 to run the red light. Victor is Mark's cousin, the same Victor from the shell companies." The room spun. I grabbed the kitchen counter to keep from falling. "Mark paid someone to kill David." "We believe so," Agent Miller said. "We are building the case. But Clara, I need you to understand. Mark does not know we have Raymond. He does not know we are closing in. But he will find out soon. And when he does, he may become desperate. You and Leo need to leave your house. Tonight, go somewhere safe. Do not tell anyone where you are going, not your friends, not your neighbors, not even your lawyer unless it is through a secure line." I wanted to argue. I wanted to stay and fight, but I had Leo to think about. So I packed 2 bags. I woke Leo up at midnight. I told him we were going on a trip. I told him it was important. He did not ask questions. He just got dressed and got in the car. We drove for 3 hours. We ended up at a small motel in a town I had never heard of. I paid in cash. I used a fake name. We slept in a room with floral curtains and a humming refrigerator. The next morning, I called Helen from a burner phone. She told me that Agent Miller had gotten a warrant for Mark's arrest. They were going to pick him up that afternoon. She told me to stay hidden until she called back. Leo and I spent the day in that motel room. We watched bad television. We ate vending machine sandwiches. We did not talk about what was happening. We could not. The words were too big. At 4:37 in the afternoon, my burner phone rang. It was Helen. "They got him," she said. "Mark was at his office. He tried to run. The FBI arrested him on charges of fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and conspiracy to commit murder. He is in custody. He is not getting out, Clara. You are safe." I started to cry. Not the quiet tears I had been crying for weeks. Loud, messy, ugly sobs. Leo came and sat next to me. He put his arm around me. He did not ask why I was crying. He just held me. When I finally stopped, I looked at my son, my brave, patient, confused son, and I told him everything. The envelope, the letter, the stolen money, the forgeries, the truck driver, Mark's visit, the arrest. I told him that his father was not a thief. That his father was a good man who was betrayed by someone he trusted. That his father had been gathering evidence to clear his name when he died. That his father loved him more than anything in the world. Leo listened without saying a word. When I finished, he was crying too, but he was also smiling. A small, sad, relieved smile. "Dad was innocent," he said. "It was not a question." "Yes," I said. "Your dad was innocent." We went home the next day. The house felt different. Lighter somehow. The flowers were gone. The cards were put away. The closet was still full of David's clothes. But the secret was out. The weight was lifted. Mark's trial was 6 months later. I sat in the front row next to Helen. Leo sat on my other side. We watched as Mark walked into the courtroom in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older. His face was pale and drawn. He did not look at me. He could not. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The prosecution presented the evidence David had gathered. The bank statements, the emails, the recordings. They called Raymond Cross to the stand. He testified that Mark had paid him to cause the accident. They called Victor, Mark's cousin. He testified that Mark had threatened to hurt his family if he did not help with the fraud. Mark's lawyer tried to argue that David was the real criminal. that David had framed Mark, but the evidence was too strong. The jury was out for only 4 hours. When the verdict came, I held Leo's hand so tight I thought I might break his fingers. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Mark was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. He would be an old man when he got out. If he got out. After the trial, Leo and I went to the cemetery. We stood in front of David's grave. The headstone was simple. It said, "David Harrison, beloved husband and father." He fought for the truth. Leo knelt down and put his hand on the stone. "I am proud of you, Dad," he said. "I always was." I knelt beside him. I thought about the yellow envelope, about the closet, about the letter that had changed everything. I thought about David, alone in his office late at night, gathering evidence, recording phone calls, fighting to protect his family even when he knew he might not survive. He did not survive. But he won. He won because the truth came out. He won because Mark was behind bars. He won because Leo and I were free. I still have the envelope. I keep it in a box under my bed, not because I need the evidence anymore, but because it is the last thing David left me. It is his final gift. The truth. People ask me if I am angry at David for keeping secrets, for not telling me about Mark sooner, for dying before he could fix everything. And sometimes, in my darkest moments, I am angry. But mostly, I am grateful. Grateful that he loved us enough to fight. Grateful that he left a map for us to follow. Grateful that even in death, he found a way to protect his family. My name is Clara, and this is the story of how I lost my husband to a liar and a thief, how I found a yellow envelope in his closet, how I uncovered a conspiracy that went all the way to the top, and how I learned that love is not about being perfect. It is about being brave enough to tell the truth, even when the truth is hard. David was not perfect. He trusted the wrong man. He kept secrets. He died before he could finish what he started. But he was brave. He was good. And he loved us. He loved us so much that he spent his last months on earth gathering evidence to set us free. I think about that every time I open my own closet, every time I see his blue sweater, every time I smell sandalwood and coffee. The grief is still there. It will always be there. But so is the love. And the love is bigger. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Do not wait. Do not make excuses for the people who hurt you. Gather your evidence. Speak your truth. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you are imagining things, because the truth has a way of coming out. It might hide in a yellow envelope at the back of a closet. It might wait for years, buried under lies and smiles. But eventually, it will find the light. And when it does, it will set you free. It set me free. It set Leo free. And somewhere I like to think it set David free too.